So now, for our main program, introducing Alejandro is Kathy Williams. And Kathy, you know, I'm just going to say a few words about her before she comes up. She's one of those unassuming, very layered people that I've really had the pleasure of getting to know over the years. So Kathy is a fourth-generation Seattleite, and her family has a long history with Seattle Rotary. She's the former Rotary Service Foundation president, 25-year Rotarian, and both her grandfather and father served as president of this club. And fun fact, Kathy leaves soon for Jordan and Lebanon, in part to engage with Syrian refugees. Please help me welcome Kathy Williams.
It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alejandro Grajal. Alejandro became the president and CEO of Woodland Park Zoo in May 2016. He came to us from Chicago and has a long career with zoos around the country and around the world. Under Alejandro's leadership, the zoo is following a bold new vision laid out in a new strategic plan. This includes reaching underserved communities so that all families can experience the zoo, leading a movement towards conservation, and finding ways to inspire empathy towards animals. Alejandro joined Seattle Rotary 2 years ago, and today Alejandro will speak about the new direction of our beloved zoo and how it is changing to stay relevant in the 21st century. As a longtime supporter of the zoo and a past board member for the zoo, I am very excited about the direction that Alejandro is leading us. I think you will be too. Please welcome Dr. Alejandro Grajal.
Hey everybody, thank you for allowing me to address you today. It's been a pleasure to join Rotary 2 years ago and to be speaking to you today. It's one of those organizations that I have admired over the years, and to be part of one of the largest in the country is particularly exciting. Thank you so much. I'm going to tell you a little bit of my personal history, how I ended up. That's one of the most common questions I get. So how did you end up being the president of the zoo? And sometimes it starts early, so let me show you if it drives. Yep, that's me. Here I'm walking out of the gates of the Madrid Zoo, which used to be in El Retiro Park, which doesn't exist anymore. But very early on, I distinctly remember telling my aunt and my mother, take me to the zoo. And living in a large urban metropolis like Madrid, it was probably one of the few places you could actually experience animals. So that was a really experience. So then my family moved on to Venezuela, and then in Venezuela, I decided to study biology and continue the passion. What was my surprise when I finally, at 20 years old, as a marine biologist, got to join the Calypso and go to with a bunch of fairly stinky French divers on an expedition to actually check the coral reefs of northern Venezuela. And to me, that was a commitment that I couldn't let pass, and then on top of that, decided a full career. After that, I went to graduate school, came here to the US to graduate school, graduated as an ecologist, and then on New York, Miami, Chicago, etc. Ended up in Seattle 3 years ago, and it's been a fantastic ride. One of the great things about, you may not know about Woodland Park Zoo is perhaps you know it as a nice neighborhood zoo in Finney Ridge. What you may not know is that Woodland Park Zoo is one of the most impactful zoos in the world. It's something that has been leading the pace in innovation and in conservation for decades, since the 60s and 70s. And we continue with that innovation. So when this opportunity opened up and they said Woodland Park Zoo, and I said, I'm all for it. And then the place is in Seattle. Seattle, it's an amazing region, not just the city, but the whole region that drives innovation, has been driving innovation for decades, reinventing itself and re-asking, how do we change the world? So the combination of being at Woodland Park Zoo and in Seattle, really the opportunity to change the world from one of the strongest platforms that you can think of was too much to pass. So I'm really proud to be here. I'm really happy. It's a fantastic city. Woodland Park Zoo, again, is this wonderful green oasis in the middle of one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. What I'm trying to show you with that picture is that square of green space where people have unique connections with animals and with nature is becoming more and more valuable. As we are developing as an urban center, as we're developing as more connections with that square screen that dominates our lives, which is that telephone, real, authentic experiences with animals and nature are really critical, and they are very, very important for not only for us, but in coming generations. The other thing that you may not know is that Woodland Park Zoo is one of the largest cultural institutions in the Pacific Northwest. At almost 1.4 million visitors and 36 family member households, it's the largest membership and largest visitation of any cultural not-for-profit institution here in the region, not just in Seattle. Almost half of those visitors are millennials, that kind of golden goal of marketers and communicators. Most likely your interaction with millennials, if you come to the park, would be that they would run you over with their strollers. But the fantastic opportunity is that here you have one of the most committed, best educated, most environmentally sensitive generations in history that are coming to the most attended cultural institution in Seattle. That is an amazing, powerful combination that we're driving in our institution. And finally, you may not know this, but we own a domain called zoo.org, and that's how my email is, alejandro.grajal.zoo.org. But that also means that very, very early on in the history of internet, we joined a very powerful social media and internet virtual presence. Right now, at 34 million followers in all of our media channels, it's one of the largest virtual presences of any zoo in North America, from Facebook to Instagram to YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Let me tell you 3 stories of how the zoo of the 21st century is actually coming to us here in Seattle and the way we're implementing that new vision. The one I want to start with is about innovation and the blending of the amazing technology that exists here in Seattle with Amazon, with Microsoft, and all the constellation of high-tech companies. And how can we use and harness that innovation to move conservation to the next level? Let me tell you a little story about how biology study really rare animals. And let me give you an example. For example, Siberian tigers or wolverines in the Cascades. These are animals that biologists chase for decades, and they rarely see them, if ever. One of the tools that we've been using for years is camera traps. These are camera traps that in my original generation, we used to put that camera trap on a tree. We would put a 24-picture roll, let that camera sit for months at a time, take that roll, develop it, and get those 24 pictures. These cameras were really expensive, so you could afford maybe 15, 20 of these cameras to do a really in-depth study. You'd be lucky if you get pictures of 2 or 3 wolverines in years of study. Right now, the change that we have is that these cameras have changed to digital. You can put a memory card that takes 12,000 pictures in each camera, and the cameras have dropped in price that you can put hundreds of cameras, so actually you can do an array of cameras around the forest. What's the problem right now is that we're taking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pictures of really rare animals in really remote spaces. This case is a study that we've been conducting over the last 2 decades on how wolverines are recolonizing the northern Cascades. Wolverines, one of the top predators, was eliminated from Washington about 50 years ago, slowly coming back. The problem here is that we got too many pictures and too few biologists. Here comes Manoj, a really bright high school kid in Bellevue that is doing artificial intelligence programming, and this only happens in Seattle, where a teenager is actually helping us and working our biologists to design a program that scans through all hundreds of thousands of pictures and selects which ones are relevant. And his program actually sees the hundreds of thousands of pictures that we're taking every winter. And then actually the program automatically selects those pictures in which there are animals. And in this case, not only that, but also selects those pictures in which they are wolverines, and those pictures in which they are cougars, and those ones that have, lots of them, squirrels. And then, of course, that technology that we are exploring here in Seattle is moving beyond Seattle and into the world. And let me give you a fantastic opportunity that I had late last year to actually visit one of our signature projects in Papua New Guinea, where we're studying tree kangaroos, one of the most rare and unusual creatures. These are kangaroos that actually live in trees in Papua New Guinea. And we're deploying some of these amazing technology to track these animals in one of the most remote places in the world. Papua New Guinea, if you don't know, is one of the countries with the least amount of roads per square kilometer. The fantastic opportunity of going to Papua New Guinea was that being a part of Rotary is like being part of a giant family. We went to visit Lae, the second largest city in Papua New Guinea, which probably has no more than 100,000 people, and we were hosted by Lae Rotary Club. So it's a great family. And this is a great combination between Rotary International, Rotary 4, and Rotary Papua New Guinea. Beautiful to be there. They have this wonderful flag. And of course, in the back in that picture, you can see a photo of the Queen. So great partnership with Rotary all around the world. The second story I want to talk about is how do we drive conservation, but making opportunities available to everybody. We want to make sure that conservation is for everybody and that everybody is a participant in conservation. And as such, the idea here is how do we bring opportunities for those that have the least amount? Let me introduce you to Jonah. Jonah is a proud member of our teen volunteer program in Woodland Park Zoo. This is a volunteer program that has several hundred teenagers hosting our visitors in Woodland Park Zoo and telling the stories and narrating the stories about animals and conservation and climate change to our zoo visitors. Jonah is also a very proud member of the special needs community. And as such, we are trying to work with this community very diligently to make sure that all abilities and all income levels and all opportunities and those barriers that make people away, that we actually destroy those barriers and make sure that everybody is a participant in a very important social movement that we're trying to drive. So here we are, what we're trying to do and we've been doing for the last few years in making sure that we remain accessible and affordable to everybody that needs it the most. During the wildlights, during the Christmas season in Woodland Park Zoo, we put quite an amazing show, and we actually have been welcoming and working with over 600 social service organizations such as Mary's Place, that is one of our strongest partners. Make sure that these communities, and particular communities that are home displaced, homeless, that have some economic distress, we bring them in that could be actually one of the cruelest seasons of the year to make sure that they have that day at the zoo and they experience what everybody can experience. Woodland Park Zoo is really trying to make sure that we remain as open and accessible to everybody. We tripled our access program, which is a program of free tickets and free and discount tickets to all those communities that need it the most. So over 100,000 free tickets that we give to communities around the city and around the region, the largest free ticket of any cultural institution in the region. Moreover, we actually announced last year a $5 ticket for recipients of EBT and WIC food support programs. And we actually joined with Seattle Public Libraries to make sure that anybody that has a library card can also have a free access to the zoo by checking out the library cards and using that to access to the zoo. And in the first year, we got close to 20,000 people coming for free to the zoo. What we're doing is that we're targeting that to make sure that those that need it the most continue to experience and be empowered by the opportunities of being active players in the society and also active players in the zoo and its programs. The idea here is that we are on a new mission. The mission of connecting people with animals and nature. The mission of actually being active players in the destiny of the planet. It was very timely that you mentioned what Teddy Roosevelt was talking about when he created national parks, because this is our heritage to destroy or to prosper. And it is our destiny to really make it happen. We believe that conservation has to be a player's field. It's not a spectator's field. So we really need to pay on that. What the zoo is nothing short of a giant megaphone that creates very vivid emotions and memories for people to connect with animals and nature. When a girl like that leans out and penguins magically glide in front of her, is an opportunity to create an emotional connection with an animal that drives a life destiny, just as I was as a one-year-old walking through those gates in the Madrid Zoo. Those memories get seared in our mind, and we actually are studying how it happens. What we've defined is that empathy for animals is one of those driving emotions that you can test and train as a muscle. That empathy, just not only for animals, but for people, is something that you can nurture and that you can create, and that empathy actually drives outcomes, behavioral outcomes and career outcomes. So we just hosted 2 months ago a national symposium on empathy for animals. We brought partners from 20 zoos and aquariums around the world, together with our partners in the Seattle Aquarium and Point Defiance in Tacoma. And between us three, brought all these partners from around the country and experts from several universities to discuss how can we be better and what kind of practices can we drive to make sure that we drive and train empathic relations for the planet and for animals. Because what happens when you have these amazing experiences that are short in duration, but so deep that almost all of you, if I've ever had that experience, actually you still remember them. And that's one of the most common stories that I hear. Oh, I love the zoo when I was 7, or when I was 12, or when my kids were 11. And everybody tells me a story that is unforgettable. That is the power of a place where people build memories, and those memories are connected to planets and the animals. So I'm very excited to announce that next year we're opening our first Pacific Northwest exhibit, an exhibit that will be presenting the iconic animals of the regions: wolves, elk, mountain goats, river otters, and the amazing creatures that live in this unique ecosystem that we call the Pacific Northwest. You may not know this, but the Pacific Northwest is one of 4 unique temperate rainforests in the world. It's one of the largest. About a third of the plants and animals that live in this region are unique to this ecosystem, something that you may not consider because you live here. It's very easy for us to tell the natives in Papua New Guinea, save the tree kangaroos. Well, did you know that banana slugs only live here? I'm not saying that we need to save all banana slugs, but it's important that we understand that we are in unique and critically important ecosystem, and it also that it's a very fragile ecosystem. An ecosystem in which we create this amazing balance between urban growth, as we are here in one of the largest metropolitan, fastest metropolitan areas, and a place where within 12 miles we have one of the best marine ecosystems in Puget Sound, and about 40 miles away, we're one of the most virgin and untouched roadless areas in the Northern Cascades, and a few miles away, the Olympic Peninsula. We really need to pay attention to that. So that exhibit is not only going to talk about the animals, but also the stories of how neighbors support their neighborhood. And it is about us supporting our home and our ecosystem, which is the Pacific Northwest. I'm really excited about that opportunity because we're going to really drive the future and a sustainable future for our region with this giant platform that we have of visitors, virtual presence, and membership that we drive around. So I'm going to ask you to join us, and join us in that evolution of what the zoo of the future is, an opportunity to create amazing, personal, touching experiences that get seared in our mind, for people to really connect, and those memories are here to create an opportunity for us to engage in conservation. The zoo is a place for fun, and it's for family, a place where people come to relax and reconnect with each other and with the world. It's a place where you have adventure and discovery, where you meet creatures that otherwise will not be possible in a small screen in your telephone or your TV, but these are actually real, authentic, living creatures that stand over 6 foot at the shoulder. A place where you connect with magical creatures from around the world that create opportunities for you to understand and identify yourself as a player with those animals, and understanding how you can drive the destiny of these animals and the planet. Place where you all can participate and experience these amazing opportunities with the natural world. I hope all of you are as inspired as we are in driving the zoo of the 21st century, which is here among us right now. The idea is an organization that is really willing to support and creating open spaces and connection with animals and nature, and where we're driving a social force for conservation. And I'm asking all of you to join that social force, to be, as captains of industry, as important and influential members of this society that we live in, to really join us in that movement for conservation. I'm going to ask you only 2 things. One of them is, this August, there's going to be a vote on the King County Parks Levy. It is something that is important not only for the zoo, the aquarium, and many other open spaces, but the idea that we are creating and maintaining the amazing balance and variety of green spaces in our core King County area. So I'm asking you to support that. And then in addition to that, I'm asking you to support the creation of this sustainable planet that we're aiming for. Every decision, everything you put in the supermarket, everything that you put in your supermarket cart or your virtual cart on Amazon makes a huge impact in the planet. So please join us in driving that change forward. Thank you very much.
I think we're ready to take a couple of questions.
Yes,
Alejandro,
thank you.
please. Yeah.
Thank you. As one who's raised in Seattle, I remember the old bars at the zoo, and the progress has been absolutely amazing. Seattle 4, through its Seattle Rotary Service Foundation, built a building at the zoo. Could you tell us how that building is currently used and the condition it's in? I think many of our newer members do not even know that we
Yes.
contributed and built that years ago.
Yeah, so we're very proud. It's the Rotary Education Building, and you should all come and visit it. It's a hub of our education programs. Right now we're calling it Innovation and Learning, and it is where we are launching this giant empathy initiative, where we are creating an opportunity for everybody that comes to the zoo to feel and train to have empathic relationships, not only with animals, but with other people. And doing the research that's creating a national network for understanding our connections with other animals and with nature. It also has a beautiful auditorium that is used not only for staff, but for lectures and visits. And for example, the next week we're having one about painted dogs in Africa, and there are lectures happening almost every week. Very actively used. We have 3 classrooms that are almost booked every other day. In these classrooms, everything from summer camp all the way to teenagers and volunteers and scientists that use all that space. So thank you, Rotary, and it's very well used. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been a zoo fan all my life, and when I moved to Seattle in 1984, it was a real thrill to go to the naturalistic exhibit that at that time was mainly the African safari exhibit. And since then, so many great new ones have been added. But it wasn't so long ago that people who felt really empathetic to animals wanted to close down zoos, the animal rights lobby. And I wonder if you could talk a little about how this empathy program that you're doing interfaces with that community and is a sort of more productive way of building on your conservation record.
Yes. So let me start by saying Woodland Park Zoo, one of the attractions of coming here was that Woodland Park Zoo, since the 70s, has been probably the most awarded zoo in North America for exhibit design and innovation. So almost every other exhibit that we've had at the zoo has won national and international awards. It was a place where we created the concept of immersive exhibits. And even today, we just hosted the Zoo and Aquarium Association conference last year. And people remarked that after 25, 26 years, some of these exhibits look as fresh and new as modern exhibits. This is the vision of creating zoo exhibits that pass the test of time and continue to engage the visitor in unique ways. The Empathy Project is, the idea is, yes, we need to create empathic relations with animals and nature. We understand that there are certain groups that are concerned about the rights of animals and the idea of zoos and animals in confined spaces. And we totally share that ethical dilemma of understanding what that means. But the bigger question that we're trying to ask here is how do we empower, and particularly how we educate the younger generation to connect with the natural world? And at a time where we're living in a place that is becoming very quickly a jungle of asphalt and cement, and a place where kids are spending more than 30 hours a week attached to a screen, the question more than ever is how do you create those empathic relations to animals and nature? How do you create an identity in every young person that connects with those animals? And that is the goal that we're trying to achieve here. Yes, one.
Hi. Amazing presentation. Thank you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about, you talked about 2 different votes at the end. I believe one's a levy. Is that correct? Can you expand upon that and what that would look like?
Yes. So there is King County Parks is supported by a citizen-supported ballot initiative that started three periods ago. Three periods ago. So we're going for a renewal. And the idea here is that the citizens support the funding to maintain and connect green spaces in King County. You may not know this, but King County is one of the places in North America, one of the urban centers in North America that has the largest balance between green and open spaces and urban development. It is important for us as citizens of King County not to lose those connections. Places that are so iconic, not only the zoo and the aquarium, but Mary Moore Park, Cougar Mountain, a series of trails and connections that go east to west and north to south throughout King County that not only provide open spaces for us as the citizens of King County, but also open spaces for carnivores and other animals to move about. We are setting a network of camera traps around King County, and we're showing pictures of bears walking among playgrounds or swing sets in the back of people's houses. I'm not saying that's a perfect combination, but it is important that we understand that we are sharing this ecosystem with amazing creatures, that the key for us to support conservation is finding a formula for coexistence and the natural world. So thank you for that question, and the ballot is coming in August, so pay attention. Thank you.